Hi, this is Brother Richard, and today we're continuing with our series, God's Priority System. Last week we had illustrated some principles in which the Bible instructs us. The saint is to concentrate on developing those things he will take with him into eternity. And we briefly touched upon cultivating a love relationship. We went on to speak about works. We were basically illustrating some aspects of works, our labors, being crafted in such a way that when we leave this world, we take the fruits of our labors with us. So, in this respect, turn to Revelation 14, verse 13. I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, Write, Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. So we see the principle of the labors, the works that we start in this life become eternal if they are works of God. Now we want to illustrate some principles dealing with our works, which is familiar to us. 1 Corinthians 3rd chapter, verse 11 to 15. The works that we do are categorized. For other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now, if any man build upon this foundation, gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire. And the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. So, our life's work is going to be tested before we leave this world. The prerequisite is the work has to be laid on the foundation of Jesus Christ. A work done apart from a relationship with Christ does not even begin to qualify as wood, hay, and stubble. The life's work has to be a work which passes God's prerequisites.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I've understood you to say that outside of Christ, any good work doesn't even qualify for wood, hay, stubble.
That's right.
So then, what works qualify for wood, hay, stubble?
A work that's performed as a Christian, but is done outside of the involvement of God. You choose that you want to start a ministry. Because you want people to hear the word. Well, God didn't send you into a particular field to cultivate. Right. You chose to do that field.
So the motivation.
You're doing it as a Christian.
Okay.
So you're doing it on the foundation of faith. But it's not God's centered faith. It's your centered basically on your evaluation of what needs to be done. It's a work of wood, hay, stubble. It's not going to bear fruit.
Okay. So we see then that most works of the world, I'm including the unsaved as well, are completely meaningless.
Oh, yes, they don't last.
I'm talking about, the Mother Teresa's, well, maybe she's a borderline case, but people who believe that they are good people is what I'm trying to say.
Their works do not endure.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, there's something that I do, and it's because I like doing it, and I've been given many occasions to do it. Whenever I see somebody driving and their brake light is out, or their light is out on their car, if I can pull up next to them, I'll tell them, roll down the window, and I'll tell them, your brake light's out, or your driver's light's out. I've been doing that for years. That's what I like doing, that's what I do. However, I don't think I'm being directed. The Spirit isn't telling me to go do this. It's something that I like doing, so I do it. So is that wood, hay, stubble?
Spirit's directing you. You're doing it as a sacrifice. You, in your own mind, have determined this is what I want to do.
Now,
but it's because of the nature that's in you.
Sometimes I will make it a sacrifice because I can't get next to the person. So what will end up happening is I'll have to pull over into the left-hand turn lane, even though I want to go straight, so that I can say the rule to tell them, look at your brake light's out. So that's actually a sacrifice because now I gotta, I gotta recapitulate, but I don't do that all the time.
Every time you do it, Mr. Smith, it's a sacrifice because you've chosen to stop your particular situation to do something to aid somebody else. You're not being benefited by it, the person's being benefited by it. So even if you didn't have to pull over, it's still the sacrifice in the sight of God. You got a reward coming.
So we see from what you've said and from what you've said that the motivation is the key. That when you do something, particularly when it costs you, even if it costs you a second for somebody else, versus I want to start a ministry, I want 5,000 people, which we've all heard before, because what is it they want? They want to look good, they want the money, whatever the thing happens to be. We see the difference in these two things.
Yes. That's the way God evaluates the work.
Right.
But let's go on. So, he talks about, at the end, all of the things you have done, which constitutes your life's work, are going to be tested, going to be evaluated. Verse 14, if any man's work abide, which he hath built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. So it's talking about what happens after we go through this fire. Yes.
Now we hear reward. What type of reward? What are we looking at in terms of reward?
Reward is position.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
That's interesting. Can you go into that a little bit more?
Well, yeah, we will a little later on.
Okay.
So, what he's saying here is the person goes through the fire. And as he goes through the fire, when he emerges on the other side, whatever happens, whatever is left over, that's going to be what he takes with him in eternity. If his works abide, he takes his works with him. We read that in Revelation 14th chapter. If his faith survives, he takes that with him into eternity. He's not going to have anything to show for it except that he's saved. Which means that he undoubtedly will wind up on the new earth.
So when you and I were doing the food ministry, we were driving underneath bridges and this, that, and the other and feeding people. And I can remember when we first started doing it, we were up to 25 sandwiches, and then we got to 50, then we got to 75 sandwiches, just you and me. And the thing of it is we were riding high, feeling pretty good about ourselves. And then all of a sudden, that feeling good stopped. We're going to the store, we're getting the tomatoes, and we're making the sandwiches, and we're bringing the juice and the cups and everything, going out and doing more than we did last week. We don't get to feel good about it. Now, do you remember what I'm getting ready to say right now?
I believe so.
The Father told me, are you giving? Are you trading?
Yeah.
You expect to feel good? You expect some kind of gratitude or thankfulness? You're trading. If you're giving to give, then that's what pleases me. And you see guys get in line and they get back in line, and God told me it's not your place. I will take care of this. You don't call them out on it. Even though, so just you have to look like an idiot in my way of thinking. Back then. Now I know a different story. But somebody's taking advantage. He's stealing from the other guy. So that's all in God's economy. That's not my business. I'm there to. What's interesting is I'm there to give the guy opportunity to store up wrath on himself. Just like when I'm living with Jimmy, I'm giving him opportunity to store up wrath on himself. I don't want this position. I don't want to be that person that's been taken advantage of, so that this guy can now have a bunch of reaping and sowing going on in his life.
But I think it's more important that you're there to work if I can use that term, the opportunity that the Lord's given you to ascend. And here, this storing up of wrath is a byproduct of that guy. Because you're the one who's been given that opportunity to either do or not do.
If you think that way about not giving somebody the opportunity to do something that's going to bring down wrath on them, you're restricting yourself. You have to do what God calls you to do. You lead somebody to the Lord, and that person backslides and goes to hell. It's not on you, it's on them. You did what God called you to do, and you're going to get a reward for it. That person took the opportunity and didn't run with it, but they did just the opposite. But let's go on. On that light, in that vein, turn to Revelation 22, verse 12. Addresses Chris's comment about the rewards. Revelation 22, verse 12. Behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give every man according as his work shall be. He says his reward is to give every man according to how that man's work shall be. Your works determine your position.
I've got to raise this because while I agree with you, it could be argued that the work represents some other item given to you, some tangible item, for example. Maybe a larger estate, maybe more angels ministering to you. What are your thoughts?
No, because that'd be part of your inheritance.
Okay.
Yes.
Are we supposed to look for works? Look for works that we can do?
Opportunities.
Yes.
You are to be open, and the Spirit will give you the work to do.
I realize that if you're being led by the Spirit, you're being led by the Spirit. Are we supposed to physically pursue looking for a way to do good works? I guess you're doing both, right?
Well, no, because if you're going to do that, you're going by the intellect.
Okay, yeah.
You just be led by the Spirit, and you'll know what to do, when to do it. In this case, it says, I come. It's talking about the rapture.
Okay.
Yes.
The reason I asked this, okay, the other day, last Sunday, I'm on my way home. I stopped at my Mexican restaurant, got my tacos. Aren't you going to get any for Angel? No. So, give a cold glass of water to my enemy?
Mm-hmm.
I made the decision. I just said, look, I'm not going to lay on the carpet and let him use me as a piece of carpet. So I said, no, I'm not doing it. So, in there lies my, I'm going through this. I want to understand the way you guys see it.
It says, bless those that persecute you. Do good to them that do bad to you.
Okay.
So you should have bought tacos, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
See,
I'm hearing that too.
I understand that, and I tell the Lord, first and foremost, I'm a sinner. There are going to be times today that I'm not going to do what you want me to do, right? And when I come across the issue that I have, similar to your own, I'm not doing it. Now I know that the Lord is not pleased about that, but I'm sorry. I'm not a good Christian. What can I tell you? That's the best I've got.
The idea is this. It's because they're seeing it from a human perspective.
Yes.
We are tit for tat. That's the way you're looking. This person did this, They
Right.
They have to see it from God's perspective. And what God does is He looks at the end. Look at that person's end. You want to see that person going through hell, torment, the whole shot? Or do you want to just see that person's attitude change?
Mm-hmm.
So from a negative, they go to a positive. That's the way God sees it.
It requires me to ask this question. Do we see the Lord taking us off the planet before the rapture, because the rapture hasn't happened yet, if we have accomplished all of these levels, let me call them, where the Lord wants us to behave exactly the way that you've just described? The more we can do that, the closer we are to dying, essentially.
Yes.
Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. Look at Paul. Paul reached a point where he could just shut it down whenever he wanted to. Let's go on. Reward, position, because it refers to the time when the Lord comes. How does God distribute the reward? Through the glorification process. What is the glorification process? Change from mortal to eternal. Position-wise, you become the fullness of what God designed you to be, a priest or an elder. Your works determine, because your works are a product of your growth, your spiritual growth. It's a reflection of that. And that means that you've qualified for the position of a mature individual in that respect. So God has basically engineered, He's crafted all of this to fall into place at the same time. Now, on the other hand, there are treasures which do not come under the heading of the reward.
Okay.
And it says to store your treasures.
Yes. We're going to cover that. Here's an example of this. Luke, the 12th chapter, verse 33 to 34. Sell that you have and give alms. What is he saying here? People store stuff. You get to a point where your closet's full of stuff. You can't put anything else in. You got shoes all over. You got this. You got, especially here in America. And you find that you have stuff you forgot you had until you happen to come across something. But what he's talking about is a Christian is supposed to travel light to begin with. We're not supposed to build up treasures on earth. We're supposed to build up treasures in heaven. We're not supposed to store material stuff on earth. We're supposed to store spiritual stuff in heaven. How do you do that? He says, when you get things that you don't need, he doesn't say give it away. He says sell it and take that money and do alms, do good works with the money you have gotten from selling something that you really didn't need in the first place. It's an act of sacrifice. Then he goes on to say, when you do this, sell that you have and give alms. Provide yourselves bags. The word bags there is purses, which wax not old. A treasure in the heavens that faileth not, where no thief approaches, neither moth corrupteth. Now what's being said here is another illustration of a principle. Life in heaven centers around light. The element of life is central. The element of light is central to life in the heavens.
Are the bags storehouses?
Yes.
Okay.
What they store is light. He says treasure in heaven. Degrees of light, which you appropriate when you get there to accommodate you and gives you a greater and greater comfortable comprehension and existence in eternity. Remember, there are levels at which you live in the eternal state.
Now, the light, which is the treasure in the storehouses, purses, is that absorbed into the person, or are these items?
No, this is something you can enter into. You can exit. It says purses. In other words, what he's doing is evaluating wealth as it is received in heavens as compared to wealth as it is received in earth. You have a purse, you have money in it. You take that money and you buy things that you want. If you didn't have the money, you couldn't buy anything. Same thing is true in the heavens. This is light that enables you to experience life on a higher plateau. If you did not build the treasure in heaven, you could not experience life at that particular level of light. Let's see if we can give you some principles here. Everything in the spiritual realm is experienced in terms of light. Scripture teaches righteous works and growth in the temporal realm translate into aspects of light in the eternal realm. Now we see various examples of this. Turn to Daniel, the 12th chapter, verse 3. They that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, They that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. So, what's being said here, your characteristics translate to light in eternity. Wisdom is going to translate into a component brilliance of light. The wise, who here show that capacity on earth, in heaven, are going to blaze with light. The light is actually their wisdom. Let's go on. Turn to Psalms 104, verse 2. Who covers thyself with light, as with a garment, who stretches out the heavens as a curtain. Light, you wear light as a garment. Some groups' light are going to be brighter than other groups' light. I believe the light of the angels, the angel priests, are going to be brighter than the light of the elders.
Now this is David's viewpoint of the Lord covering himself with light. Mm-hmm. Does the Lord consider he covers himself with light?
Sure.
That's how the Lord sees it.
Sure.
So light is a covering for the Lord.
Sure.
From the Lord's perspective.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now, the way he's speaking, it sounds as if it's something that you add where in the scriptures God is light.
Right.
So he doesn't have to put light on.
Right.
He is light.
Right.
Yes, but he uses the light also. Your flesh and blood, you go out here and you kill an animal, you take the skin, you cover it over. It's a material covering a material. Same thing is true in heaven.
Okay.
Let's go on.
I'm sorry, just very quickly.
Sure.
Is this why the Lord does not allow anything or anyone to come into his presence uncovered?
Sure.
For the reason that you just explained.
Well, you can't come into his presence uncovered.
The covering must be light.
It has to be light,
Okay.
yeah.
Got it.
Hang on. If you are light, then we've now been incorporated into the realm of light because of
Yes.
Yes. So we are light right now. Jay saw my light.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, he saw. I don't know if that's the beginning stages or if they're completed or somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that my component is light. I know it's going to be brighter at the rapture.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because I am light, is it considered a covering for me right now?
No.
Oh, okay, so I have to get a covering of light before I get in the presence of the Father.
Would you walk out in the street naked?
Probably not.
Well, wave a certain amount of money, I might. I mean, if you want to get down to brass tacks.
Your material, but you have a material covering. Otherwise, you're going to be pretty embarrassed.
So
Same thing is true with light. You are a being of light,
right.
but you have to have a covering of light, sitting in the Father's presence.
Would that be the celestial body and or the glorified body?
No, it would be a covering for the celestial body.
Would it be a covering for the glorified body?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
You have a robe, a stole in the Greek. The first thing described Jesus. He's light and it's his brilliance, but they also describe this brilliant
Without spot or blemish. I'm putting pieces together as you're
Sure.
asking
Yeah.
these questions.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
I wish we had more time.
Yes, it's the one thing we'll never have enough of.
We're going to do one more thing. Turn to John, the first chapter. Not John, the first chapter. Turn to 2 Corinthians, 4th chapter, verse 6. Everything you do, every characteristic that you have is light. A form of light. An expression of light. 2 Corinthians, 4th chapter, verse 6. For God, who commanded the light to shine out of darkness, has shined in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face or in the person of Jesus Christ. Knowledge is light. The more knowledge you have, the greater your light's going to shine.
Is knowledge a covering?
No,
Okay.
knowledge is a characteristic.
Okay.
Everything you have is going to emanate in a specific way. Your covering, light covering is going to emanate in a certain way. Your characteristics going to emanate in a certain way. Now, I'm going to close with one more thing, and this is something the Lord laid on my heart just yesterday. Turn to Revelation, 4th chapter. Verse 3. And he that sat, talking about the Father seated on his throne, was to look upon like a jasper and a sardine stone, and there was a rainbow round about the throne in sight like unto an emerald. John sees the Father seated on the throne, a blazing light. Yes.
At one time, I got YHVH right next to this. At one time, you said this was YHVH. That's why I wrote it down.
If I did, I was mistaken. No, this is never YHVH. This is Elohim. This is Elyon. Now, YHVH is seen in the Old Testament in a similar way, because he's created after
the
characteristics of Elohim. Anyway, John sees this figure seated on the throne. He can't see what he looks like. He can only see the light coming from him. Blazing light, jewels, radiance. You are not going to see it the same way John saw it. The light that comes from each beam that comes forth is a reality. When you get into eternity and you see the characteristics of God, love, peace, joy, it's all going to be a characteristic of light. Love may be a characteristic of light, shining in a red zone. Peace, a blue zone. Joy, a purple or something along that line. And when you enter into that, you're going to see, you're going to feel, you're going to experience not a light, you're going to experience a reality that's in the light, characteristic of the light.
Each beam is a reality.
Yes.
Wow.
Meaning, okay, you're receiving, you're experiencing this light, and there's going to be somebody else that's not at your level experiencing the same light, but they're going to experience it differently. Just a slight variation, but because you have applied yourself in the learning, the beginning, the growing process, you're receiving it on a different spot than the person next to you.
What I find interesting is that all light is a spectrum within which there are many beams. This is why I questioned you, because then there are, I presume, realities next to realities and realities within realities. Yes. And I presume there's even more other ways to describe it.
Yes.
That's so huge that no one could comprehend that.
Yes. That's God. And that's the way he reveals himself.
Praise the Lord.